Did that sound a bit iffy? Hello everyone and welcome to Joys It Flies. So today's tutorial is a new sewing pattern that I actually created. I can make a PDF pattern, yay. But it's a sewing pattern for how to create a corset styled belt. It's pretty simple, so if you're a beginner you can join in. I'm going to keep the instructions pretty slow and it's actually a very quick project, so hopefully you will like it. So for this pattern, of course, you're going to need the paper pattern. This is just a 3-page PDF file that is, if you follow the link in the description, which takes you to our website, you'll find it there. So all you need to do is download it, print it out, and then we'll go into sizing and cutting out a little bit later on. So for fabric, you're going to want quite a heavyweight fabric. The last time I made this, I used a corduroy, which I really loved. I'd recommend it, it's very pretty. This time I'm just going to be using this. There's quite a lot of it, you won't need this much when you do it, but it's just this blue canvas type fabric. I think it's a mix with something else, but it's pretty heavyweight, so it will hold its shape. And then of course you'll need interfacing for obvious reasons, for it to hold its shape. This one doesn't have the traditional boning that the corset would have because it's more of a corset styled one. And I'm going to admit now, I've never used boning in my life before. That's something I want to do. But to make it more beginner friendly and more comfy, we're going to leave the boning out. The pattern though, if you know how to use boning, go ahead and stick it in yourself, you know, you can do your thing. And then you'll also need, I use ribbon because the last time I did it with the corduroy I was saying about, for the tying up, I tried to make bias tape out of corduroy, and of course for my grommets, which are quite small, it did not work. So because you always use such a thick fabric for a corset, it's too thick to make very small bias tape or anything to tie it up with. So I suggest you use ribbon. You can try, of course, go ahead, or if you want to use a contrasting fabric, maybe that would look cute, but I'm using ribbon today. And then of course the last major thing you're going to need is the favourites of grommets. If you don't have any grommets but you want to get them for this project, obviously you will need them for this project, so that's a stupid thing to say, sorry. I've linked in the description the same set I have. And then of course the last thing you're going to need for this project is sewing machine, general sewing equipment, all of that jazz. So I think I've done enough chatting right now. If you're fed up with my chatting already, there are timestamps below in the description, so you can play around with those, skip ahead, whatever. But let's now get to the pattern. So once you've printed out the PDF file, you should have 3 pieces, A, B, C, they're not in order, sorry. And on the 3 sheets there should be 6 individual pattern pieces. Now we're going to want to cut out pattern pieces, but to find your correct size, on our website where you found the link for the PDF file, if you scroll down on the post you'll find that I've added size charts, 2 of them, which you can use to help find your size. And then you can just cut all the pieces out. So now that you have all of your 6 pattern pieces cut out, you can go ahead and cut them out of your fabric. Each one of them says on it how much you should cut out of the fabric and interfacing, so go ahead and cut them all out. So I cut out all of my fabric and interfacing, and I suddenly realised there may be a few points on the pattern that it might be useful for me to explain. So as you can see, on each pattern piece they're numbered. So that was simply because that it's going to be less confusing for when I'm explaining how to sew it. Instead of me saying, oh, place the front, centre and side, back, right sides together, it's going to be much easier for me to just say place 4 and 5 right sides together. So that will make things a little less confusing in that sense. And then what you can also do is the little notches down the side of number 1 pattern piece. This is for where you're going to be placing your grommets. So now that you've cut the fabric out, on 2 of the pieces you can mark with a tailor's chalk where those notches are for future reference. Now you can attach your interfacing to your fabric, whether that's sewing it or ironing it on like me. Yay! Prepping is all done. So first of all, we're going to be dealing with all of the pieces that have interface on them. Of course, that's excluding pieces 5 and 2, which none of them had interfacing. So take your two number 1 pieces and the number 2 pieces, and you're going to want to place them right sides together, matching the shortest edges. And then you're going to want to sew them together. Really quickly, sorry, I forgot to mention it before. Just before I started sewing, I suddenly remembered to tell you that this pattern has a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So the seam allowance is already in the pattern, but make sure you're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance instead of the normal 5/8 of an inch. Now, you've probably heard it a million times before, but it really makes a difference for this sort of project. Every time you sew a seam, please make sure you iron that seam open. It will make it so much neater and make your life easier in the future. Now you're going to want to take your number 3 pattern pieces and pin them right sides together with the number 2 piece, and then sew them together and iron the seams open as you did before. Now continuing our way round, you're going to want to take your number 4 pattern pieces and place the side seam right sides together with your number 3 pattern piece, and then you're going to want to sew them together. It's getting longer and longer with each step, but now you're going to want to place your number 5 piece right sides together with your number 4 piece. This is my favourite piece because it doesn't matter which way up it goes. And then you can sew them together. Now we're going to be using the last pattern piece, which is number 6, and you're going to want to place it right sides together with number 5 piece. And then you can just sew it together. So we've completed sewing the 2 sides of the front piece, so now all that needs to be done is place them right sides together, match the 2 number 6 pieces, pin them, and then sew it together. Good news! You've just created, oh, it's a bit long for the screen, you've just created the front side of your corset belt. So now, I hate to sound monotonous, but all you've got to do now is repeat every step that we just did here with your remaining pattern pieces, so the ones that don't have any interfacing on them, and then you will have created the back piece as well. So here we are, I'm all done. Here's my back piece and here's my front piece. So now all we've got to do is sew these 2 together. So now that I've completely pinned all of it together, all you're going to need to do now is sew around the entire thing, but at the bottom, I suggest the bottom, it's going to be the easiest place for that when you then turn it inside out. Leave about a 3-inch gap, approximately, for when we're going to turn it right sides out later on. Mine is now all sewn together, so I'm going to go ahead and clip all of the corners. Once you've done that, you can then go ahead and turn it right sides out. And then I'm just going to use a knitting needle to poke all the corners out. And there you are, mine's all right sides out. It's not looking very pretty at the moment, and not at all like a corset, so I'm going to take it over to my iron and iron it all flat. Make sure that when you iron it, that little gap at the bottom, you fold over the seam allowance and then just iron it flat, because then we'll close that when we over sew it. And so once you're happy with it, you can just go ahead and over sew around the entire thing. I generally do it about 5/8 of an inch from the edge. So now all of the sewing is done and it's time to move on to the fun part, which is adding the grommets in. So to go along with your corset belt and your grommets, you're also going to need a hammer. And as I said at the start, all of these marks are for where your grommets are going to be placed. So to start off with, we're going to be using this tool, which has a sharp circle at the bottom. And this is going to be used to making the holes in your corset for your grommet. So now it's time to insert the grommets itself, and you're going to be needing these two tools. So to start off with, place that one down, and the half of your grommet with the ridge of metal sticking up, you're going to want to place it down over it, just like that. And now this is the important part. You're going to want to take your hole from in your fabric and place the right side down over that part of the grommet. So then you've got the bottom part of the tool, grommet, fabric, and then you can see the top of the tool sticking up. And then using the flat disc part of your grommet, place it over all of that. Oops. You should feel it slip over that top part, the sticking up part of the other part of the grommet. And then we're going to use this tool. As you can see, it's got a hole at the bottom there. Place it over the grommet and then just start hammering. There you go, there's the wrong side. And there's the right side. And just continue that process for all of the grommets on that side, and then do the entire process again on the other side of the corset belt. And now the very last thing that you need to do is lace up your corset with your ribbon however you like. And there you go, we're all done. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. And I know you hear it all of the time, but if you could give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, it would really help. And I also have more sewing tutorials and patterns over on our website, so I've linked that in the description below if you'd like to check it out. And once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.